When people hear the name Victor Hugo, most of us immediately think of thick novels, dark Paris streets, poverty, injustice, and stories that hurt a little too much because they feel real. But Victor Hugo was never just a great writer. He was someone who challenged kings with words, who kept writing even in exile, and who lived love, loss, and rebellion to their fullest extremes. He was born in 1802, right into a France that was already unstable and restless. Revolutions, empires, collapsed monarchies, chaos was normal. Hugo grew up surrounded by contradictions. His father was a general under Napoleon, constantly moving from place to place, loyal to the empire. His mother, on the other hand, was a strict royalist. Growing up between these two opposing worlds taught him something very early on: the world is never simply black and white. He became famous when he was still very young, but fame didn't soften him. If anything, it made him bolder. Hugo never believed writing was just an artistic pursuit. For him, writing was a form of resistance. When he wrote Les Misérables, his goal wasn't simply to tell a story. He wanted to expose an unjust system. Jean Valjean may feel like fiction, but Hugo had seen many real people like him in courtrooms, people whose entire lives were destroyed over small mistakes. He once said, "Those who open a school close a prison." That sentence wasn't poetry for him. It was a belief. He truly thought ignorance created crime, and that society preferred punishment over understanding. There are many sides of Victor Hugo people don't usually talk about. For example, while writing Les Misérables, he became so obsessed with finishing the book that he literally locked himself into his room. He would give his clothes to his servant and keep only a blanket, so he wouldn't be tempted to go outside. Writing became his only option. When he died in 1885, Paris practically stopped breathing. More than 2 million people joined his funeral procession. His coffin was carried through the streets to the Pantheon, surrounded by crowds. For a writer, this kind of farewell was almost unheard of. During his years in exile, Hugo also became interested in spiritualism. He attended seances and kept notes claiming he communicated with Shakespeare, Dante, and even his deceased daughter. These writings still exist today, quietly reminding us how deeply grief shaped him. His love life was just as intense as his novels. Though he was married to Adele, he spent more than 50 years in a relationship with Juliette Drouet. She was not just his lover, but his confidant and muse. Hugo wrote her letters almost every single day. He believed deeply in love, once writing, "To love is to live, even despite everything." One of the most fascinating things about the Hunchback of Notre-Dame is that it wasn't written just to tell a tragic love story. At the time, Gothic architecture in Paris was being neglected and destroyed. Hugo wrote the novel to draw attention to this cultural loss. It worked. After the book's success, Notre-Dame Cathedral was restored. In a very real sense, a novel saved a building. Hugo was never quiet about politics. He openly opposed Napoleon III, and for that, he paid a heavy price. He was forced into exile for 19 years. But he never saw exile as defeat. Some of his greatest works were written far away from France. He once said, "Exile is for my body, my thoughts are free." His books remain powerful even today. Les Misérables is a novel about conscience, mercy, and human dignity. Notre-Dame de Paris destroys the false division between beauty and ugliness. The last day of a condemned man stands as one of the strongest arguments ever written against the death penalty. The Toilers of the Sea shows the brutal struggle between humans and nature. 93 exposes the bloody, unromantic side of revolution. Victor Hugo is still read because the world he described hasn't disappeared. Poverty still exists. Injustice still exists. Systems still crush people. What makes him timeless is that he never let us look away. He believed that the future belonged to those with conscience. Victor Hugo reminds us that people can change. But if systems don't change, the same suffering repeats itself. Reading him can be heavy, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes painful, but it never leaves you indifferent. And maybe that's what real literature is supposed to do.